So good morning, everyone. My name is Apurva. I am working in MetLife in InfoSec Risk Management. I am a Cybershiksha alumni of 2019 batch. Cybershiksha is a joint skilling initiative for young women by DSCI and Microsoft. So I'm delighted to welcome you all to the session Cloud Conundrum, Digitization, Security and Privacy, Digitization through Cloud while addressing security, privacy and policy constraint. So the session will begin shortly, and it's my pleasure to invite fellow panelists on the dais, Dinesh Verma, Prisma Cloud Business Leader, India and SAC Palo Alto Network, B. Paparazu, Executive Director, CISO ONGC, Dr. Sumit Yadav, Assistant Director System, Income Tax Office, Shankar Ramrakhani, Executive VP and Group CISO and Head BCP IIFL, and Shomik Bhattacharya, Global CISO and CDPO, Mankind Pharma Limited. So now I would like to request Shankar to please lead the session. Thank you all.
Thank you. I am audible, right? So, firstly, thanks to DSCI, for giving the opportunity, right, to moderate this session. And I would say a very hot topic, cloud. So we have seen cloud has excelled since last few years, and cloud is here to stay. It has helped organizations, to digitize their entire infrastructure, environment, setup, apps, and largely most of the organizations are benefiting of this using this technology, right? So we always say that great things, right, comes with great risk, right? So, and cloud is not the new thing that many organizations have started using it. They have experienced a lot of issues in terms of the privacy, data security, and the other attacks which are happening at the cloud environment. So that's why it becomes very important for the organization to have a robust strategy towards their cloud security, and how do we deploy, or how do we govern the entire security around this area. So the topic would be primarily to discuss how organizations are leveraging cloud to enhance or meeting their business objectives, right, as well as how they are addressing the risks and other security threats associated with it. So I have experts from various industries. So we discussed yesterday on many of the questions, and came up that it's a very important topic, and organizations should level their speed to ensure that they address these issues on time. So we have Dr. Sumit with us. We also have Raju from ONGC. We have Dinesh, who is expert in the cloud security from Palo Alto, as well as Somik. So I'll start with Dr. Sumit, right? So my first question would be like,
Yes.
sure. So how do you perceive the current landscape of digitization through cloud adoption, right? Considering the evolving trends and challenges, and you coming from the government industry, right? How government organizations are seeing the cloud at this stage? Because post-COVID, we have also seen that many organizations, including from the government, fraternity, are leveraging cloud. They're coming with the guidelines. So how do you see the overall picture of it? Yep.
Thank you, Shankar.
Yeah.
Once again, thank you, DSI, for providing this opportunity. I welcome all of you. I must say this thing, that cloud adoption is basically a roller coaster ride where you want both the things. You want to enjoy it, as well as you want the full safety and security over it. So my request to all of you is be seated, buckle up your seat belts, and enjoy this ride. So cloud, we know this thing that primarily the cloud offerings are of three kinds basically. It starts with the public cloud, then the hybrid cloud, and the private cloud. So they are, apart from this, there are four kind of services are there. Like it start from the infrastructure as a service, then the platform as a service, then software as a service. Nowadays, serverless computing and edge computing also, these 2 points are in very much in discussion. So why they are in very much discussion? Because with serverless computing, one can easily drill down till the level of the data, and they can facilitate the real-time computing and facilitate the organization in this way. So with respect to the cloud adoption, I want to say this thing that I must say this thing that in 2013, Government of India, they initiate the project which is GI Cloud, or also said the Megras. So with the help of this, they want to accelerate the digital infrastructure within the country, also so that the other people, they can enjoy the cloud services by having the very less amount of ICT cost. So currently, Government of India empaneled more than 20 CSPs, cloud service provider, so that one can use those facilities. Also, in the recent past, Government of India, they have actually started offering the cloud services over the GEM portal. So these are the basic points. Apart from this, the cloud adoption is definitely, we cannot imagine the world now without the cloud, because country like in India, which is having the huge population, so services, if you want the on-demand services, or if you want to use the pay for the services, pay for the use of services, then the cloud is only the option. Yes, this is the some cons are also there, like the safety and security with respect to the cloud. So to ensure the safety and security, there are various international and as well as the national regulations are also there. I must talk about the GDPR as well as the DPDB 2023, which recently is in discussion. So with this, I want to say this thing: the government is also taking very good initiative with respect to the cloud adoption, and now various ministries, central government as well as the state government, they are ready to use the cloud services. They are offering they are using consuming the cloud offerings to serve the general public of this country. Yes.
Yeah, very well said, Dr. Sumit, and you pointedly, righted that it's a roller coaster ride, right, for many organization, and government have came up, with very, decent regulations, and primarily Ministry of Electronic and Telecommunication, they have came up with the list of 15 to 20 cloud service providers, right, which
It's 21.
yeah, 21, which organizations can adopt, right? So you adopt, and of course, going to the cloud provider, it's the organization responsibility becomes first to secure the, data, around that. Yeah. Thank you so much for your views. So I'll ask Mr. Raju now. So what strategies do you think, suggest for the organization who are aiming to leverage cloud for digitization without compromising their, security and the privacy related controls?
Good afternoon, everybody. And hope I'll make it interactive so that you don't fall off to sleep after lunch. This is our first session after lunch. Thanks to DSCI, who has invited me to be a panel discussion on this topic. I come from ONGC, PSC oil and gas background, Maharatna. We are big, but we have challenges in classification of data. For anybody who wants to go to cloud, be it public or private, the fundamental thing is what is the purpose of the cloud, and from a security perspective, is the cloud safe? I think all of you, PingSafe has put a poster there, 45% of the attacks in front of your seat. This is basically a report from IBM Ponemon, if I'm not mistaken. IBM Ponemon made a report, and they collected data from 17 countries, and they have been doing it over a period of more than a decade. They have extensive data, it's based on extensive data. And any model in go to cloud, the responsibility is called shared. And typically, be it public or private, everybody wants service at a low cost. When we get to a low cost L1 tender, the first thing which is ticked off is security. Because security comes at a cost. And not only at a price, it comes at a cost of convenience. Suppose, let's say there is a web application which is going to cloud. Is it DDoS protected? Will it be critical? Will the industry need it? And mind you, cloud is a one-way journey. Technically, it is possible to replace your CSP, but it comes at a great cost, which is not there in the tender. Because once you're there in the cloud, you integrate with many of your internal systems, like SAP and other systems. And reintegrating it with the systems comes at a cost. And it comes at a cost of business loss also. So migration is possible, but migration comes at a cost which is not specified, which is not cannot be defined at the moment, which comes at a future. And one may normally migrate because if you are not liking performance or something, critical thing is, so when you are not liking the performance of your CSP, how do you give the responsibility of migrating also? That's another challenge. And fundamentally, why do you need to go to cloud? Do you need the resource? Do you have the scale up operations? Is the operation required to be scaled up very fast? Because normally, like a PSU, when we do a sourcing of a particular solution, is we provision for the life cycle 5 years. So if the life cycle is costly, 5 years pretension is costly. Am I scaling up? Can I do intermittent? So does it give scale of advantages? These are the things we do. From a security perspective, I normally give a template of 50 plus questions, which covers all the perspective to analyze solution, the architecture of the solution, the integration. And also I see traditionally, from a personal perspective, for even be it private or public, the cloud model will have to be followed because data center model on-prem is going to vanish away within 3-4 years, in my personal perspective, because of two things: technology, rapid changes in LLM module. The large language model generic AI needs 8x more resources as of now than a normal on-prem cloud. You need a lot of GPUs, computing power needs extensively, scaling up comes fast. If you want fast, it comes at a cost. So on-prem 8x resources, application driven, will be very costly. So one has to migrate to cloud. Another thing is a lot of communication technology is changing. Now we are using captive 5G for industries. 5G is available privately, but there are service available for a plant. Suppose I have a big manufacturing plant, I can have captive 5G, where I can directly transfer the data into the cloud directly. It comes at a cost, very beneficial cost, and I can encrypt the data also. And another advantage is low Earth orbits are coming, satellites are coming up. The LEO satellite war is going to come up within a year. Like Starlink has 56,000 satellites. Amazon Kuiper has about 5,600 satellites plus. Reliance will come up. Bharti Airtel is going to come up big way in satellite communication, low Earth orbit. We already deployed BSNL high throughput satellites, 100 MB satellites. We use it. We have 100 plus antennas which have 100 MB direct at remote locations. So this is going to change very fast. So conventional data center is going to change very fast. So what thing is, I would suggest from my personal perspective, have a template, what are the things, what are the risks which is to be done, how they are mitigated, should be in one particular framework, so that it has to be specifically when the companies have IT governance in principle. So centralized, then you can evaluate the journey for the cloud and the risks involved, because ultimately job of a CISO is mitigation of the risk. So how the risks are best mitigated. Not going to cloud is risky, but going to cloud is also risky. So risks are both ways. Not doing business is good, but not doing business also very risky. Business is not going to suffer. So CISO as a business enabler needs to mitigate the risks which has there, be it on-prem or be it cloud. That's a part of the game.
Thank you, Raju, for, giving your thoughts, right? And I also concur that, yeah, security comes with a cost, right? When technology asks for the, application infra cost, right? Then, of course, security team will also, it has, cost is, involved, right? To secure the, required information. And other important thing you mentioned about the cloud statistics, right? It is very easy to attack in cloud environment because everything is primarily public. And the way, the damage one, bad attack can impact on a cloud environment must be much more, harder and, very heavier than the on-prem environment. And you also said on the, risk assessment part, right? So we can go to the cloud, but a thorough risk assessment has to be there. You need to evaluate all the controls, do proper cost benefit analysis and the level of controls that you required. Yeah, I think, that organization, need to think, because cloud is not also cheap, right? So if it is not deployed in the correct way, right, you will end up paying more, with the more risk. Yeah, so risk has to be balanced, between the deployment as well as, with the security. So, Soumik, my question, is there, how can businesses maintain the balance between the benefits of the cloud digitization and the potential risk associated with the security and privacy concerns primarily? Yeah.
First of all, thank you so much to DSCIs for having me on the show, and good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen out here. I think the moment we are thinking about digitization, we are already open to the attack surface, right? This is the first and foremost word. So in that case, the framework, what exactly Mr. Raju has talking about, right? So we have to have a framework. We have to have a proper standard along with the control matrix. So we have to understand that security will only be there when we are having the privacy in place. The moment we are having privacy, we are having the protection in place. So without privacy and the protection, there is no security. So if you talk about the cloud security, then we have to also think in a security by function, by design. How I am designing the solution. So architecting of the cloud is the I think the key. So how we are architecting that particular cloud platform, either it is a IaaS or PaaS or SaaS, whatever the platform it is. So and what design that I am looking for in terms of my business to roll out, right? There could be tons of number of different design aspect is also there. So what is required for me? What data that I'm going to put into the cloud? That's all is important. The moment I talk about the data security part, because these days the data security in terms of DPDP or SEBI regulation, RBI regulation, there are, I mean, I am from the basically the pharmaceutical industry. So we are the highest regulated industry in the world where even the FDA is also on us, right? So any imbalance on the data means there are direct loss or maybe a huge fine is on top of us. So in that case, the privacy is the first. So we talk about the data security, then we talk about the classification of the data, the identification of the data, and then put that data into the right bucket, and then protection comes later, right? It is all a step-by-step process. So once we talk about this data and architecting has been done, then we talk about the cloud security on top of that, right? And then the moment the cloud comes on top of the data, then your design comes up. You talk about your zero trust security model, right? Then the moment we talk about the zero trust security model, your people, process, and technology, all three comes after. What data that you are going to put, how much it is secure of. Then this SaaS security model comes into the picture, right? We are talking about the cloud and its ZTNA. We are talking about the cloud access security broker. To provide the data security, we also need the DLP. Here, this data classification, integrity, availability all comes into the picture. So what I'm trying to talk about is that it is not just about technology. Sure. The moment you talk about the cloud security, you have to, it is a holistic approach. You have to have an understanding of the people who are managing that. The role-based access, your authentication and authorization comes and play a big picture, even on the cloud side. Your coverage of the data security, your coverage of entire the framework and the standard in terms of the information security and risk management, so that how much you can tolerate that risk, what the risk that you can mitigate, and the risk that you have to absorb. It is a holistic understanding, in my understanding says. And on top of that, the privacy is always there. So once you complete these all things, I think rest of the part which is only remain is the third-party risk assessment, because cloud as a service, which from where I'm going to get that service, I also happen to have an understanding that how I am secure on their own hand, right? Are we already performing the third-party risk management? They are also performing their infrastructure, vulnerability assessment, penetration testing, time to time. So those information I also have to adhere and need to see, because ultimately my data need to be secure on their own hand. So all this posture, if you can cover up, I think then only I'm just going to provide complete privacy, protection, and security. That's it.
Yeah. Thank you, Somik. So yeah, so you very well addressed on the holistic approach, right? One cannot do, a piecemeal approach, when you try to, secure the cloud. And other, you also mentioned that a correct framework is needed, right? And when you say you need to balance between the protection and the privacy, right? Then only your data security,
Absolutely.
comes. And classification also one of the challenge, right? We don't know whether business is properly classifying the data or no, right? It's not the CISO or his team responsibility. Business needs to, own that part. So
Absolutely.
I think, all of these things, need to be checked, when, balancing, both of this aspect. Yeah. Thank you. So now I'll come to Dinesh, right? So you did hear our challenges primarily, right? And cloud is, very scary sometimes. So we never know, when, things will go wrong. So from the, OEM, technology perspective, right? What all specific technology or security solutions that you feel, are critical, for us to implement, deploy, and monitor, and and also ensuring that business is not impacted, right? Because as Raju mentioned that business is there to do the business, right? And security cannot be a bottleneck. I have to be business enabler, right? Gone were the days when we used to say that, okay, block, you don't do it. But now when we say that, okay, we will not allow this, but we have to give the alternative. So cloud, let them go. But what all we need to do, from the OEM perspective, just let us know. Yeah.
Thanks, Shankar. Thank you, Shankar. Can you hear me? First of all, thank you DSCI for hosting us. I think all the panelists made very good points here. I'll tell you from an cloud security design perspective, the way we look at is security is like a kind of a braking system in your car actually, right? It let you go at that speed, correct? You're going at that speed because you know that there is a braking system, but that doesn't mean that the brakes are hampering the speed. You need both to go at that speed, right? So it is an enabler, as you rightly pointed. The way we do at a design level, it's very important. The security teams should clearly know what are they trying to protect. Okay, so whether it's in the on-prem world, in the data center world, or in the cloud, security fundamentally remains the same. Earlier also we had applications, we had data. The same thing is going into the cloud, right? Cloud is just an enabler for the digitalization, correct? Because you need that scale, you need that speed, you need that agility for your modern business actually. So the first important thing is if you're very clear on what you're trying to protect, because from a business standpoint, this applications and even government of India, for example, so much digital stack is going on, and then all the pharma companies or even any IT companies or digital natives, fundamentally they're trying to make their customers' life easier, right? That's a banking app or any apps actually you say. Those applications are like machines. If the machine goes down, your business goes down.
True.
So first important thing is we need to know that there is a business we are protecting. Point number one. Point number two, if that application is not available to customers, there's a revenue loss. So you're protecting the revenue. If it is breached, the data is stolen, there's a reputation risk, there's a regulation risk. So first we're trying to protect your customer data and your applications, because if your application goes down, business goes down. Data leaks out, your business is dead. So if you know clearly that these are the two things we're trying to protect, it doesn't matter whether it's on-prem or in the cloud. Now comes, if I have to protect these two things, my applications and data, I need to think about this at the design stage itself. As Shomik clearly pointed out, the security teams need to clearly sit with the business teams. Hey, these are the things you want to protect. Let's look at from the design perspective itself, because security cannot be an afterthought. It has to be right from the design. Okay, these are the things I'm trying to protect. This is the framework I need, but it has to be a program actually. Security, I feel fundamentally is nobody can stand up and say I'm 100% secure. Can we? There's always something new. If you see so many companies here, and next year you come, there will be double the number of companies here, right? The problem is the bad actors are always one step ahead. We need to first believe that actually, right? So from a design perspective, if you're able to put the framework in place and clearly quantify that, these are the frameworks I want to follow. So from a cloud perspective, these are the apps I'm protecting. If you're on AWS, Azure, or GCP, fundamentally it starts like how you protect an airport actually, or a bank, right? Ultimately the data is somewhere in the center, or the people are the assets, or the data is the asset here. So you have your perimeter security, like you can have a nice next generation firewall, which is the perimeter security, anything going in and out, the north-south security. That will be the first level, but also when you're designing the cloud infrastructure, like a landing zone infrastructure, how can you integrate the perimeter security along with your cloud service provider? Even before you put any applications or data in the cloud, in the design stage itself, how can I first understand the perimeter of my cloud? But just having a main gate for your bank or for your home or for the airport is not enough, right? In the cloud world, as Shankar also mentioned, everything is public, right? Just putting in a firewall at the perimeter doesn't necessarily mean you're secure. Partly you're secure. Then comes inside, you need a CCTV, you need to understand what is running inside your cloud, who is configuring it, and who are the people who have access to the cloud. So there could be an insider breach, or your own credentials can be compromised. So you need to also focus on identity security. You need to focus on your data security, as you mentioned. So all these things, technologies come together, but very important point is to minimize the number of security tools. The more number of tools you have, it becomes the more number of alerts, and stitching those alerts is becoming a nightmare actually. There's always a concept going on these days called alert fatigue. The more number of tools you have, the more dashboards, more alerts. But who will stitch all of them and make sense actually? Because cybersecurity, there's a lot of skill gaps also in the market, especially cloud security, a huge skill gap in the market. In fact, some of our large customers sometimes send us a job description and saying, hey, do you have any good engineer you can recommend actually? Because the expectation is very high. So simplicity in the security design also is extremely important. As less number of tools as possible, have a platform approach so that you have that full visibility. Now, this is how the cloud infrastructure is looking. These are the applications. This is where my crown jewels are.
Sure.
This is where I need to protect. And your framework, and then have a programmatic approach that, as of now, I implemented 25%, 50%, 75%, and quantifying that score, having a programmatic approach. So these are all the technologies I would say, just to summarize: a good perimeter, next generation firewall kind of security, the posture management, your workload protection, then data security, of course, and also implementing security early in the software development lifecycle. Many of the developers, when you're designing those applications or coding the applications, they think security team are a hindrance. They think security team are delaying their development, right? That's why developers hate security teams, and security teams think developers don't understand security. But we need to introduce security early in the software development lifecycle at the raw material stage itself, so that you don't have these issues before the application goes into production. So all these things combined, you need to have a holistic approach, and then have a programmatic approach, is my opinion.
Yeah. Thank you, Dinesh. I think, very well, explained, on the controls that we required, and few of them, I can summarize is primarily the basics has to be there, that whether it's so you're an on-prem or cloud, you need to have a same, mentality to secure the data. And you also rightly mentioned that security by design approach, right? So security should not be afterthought. And even in any project or anything you're making live, right? Business is onboarding any application or project, risk assessment has to be done from the day one. Okay. And the other important thing also mentioned, there are a lot of skill gaps, right? Introducing more tools will not actually, make your life, easy, right? It will only complex the life. Then again, you need to, consolidate all of them and, see, where the things can go wrong, right? So simpler the tools, it will, and of course, simpler the processes will make the, security team, life easy. And the other thing important, that the holistic approach, again, it's needed, right? And this has to be there. And of course, cloud is, we need to have this next generation tools like firewall, you mentioned, cloud workload protection, which I see it's needed, because native controls cannot block this. So I think, yeah, thanks for the feedback. So yeah, now my next question to Dr. Sumit, right? So in the context of the data security and privacy, right, what role or policies we think, will help, organization to have, approach towards cloud adoption, maybe from your perspective, government's perspective, as well as, the overall perspective. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. So before just discussing about the policy, I just want to ask one question to make the session more interactive. That do you pay taxes? Income tax? Do you pay income tax?
There is no choice.
Do you guys pay income taxes?
Much more
Do you
than what
love
we
to pay
supposed
income tax?
No. No.
Some
Some
yes and
but
some no are there. So I just take you back in the time of the 700 or 800 years back. There is a quotation which is actually the motto of income tax department. That is Koso Mula Danda. So it means that for any region, for any country, the backbone to run that country is within the rules, the policy. So that's why if we are talking about the cloud adoption, so policies, rules framed by the government, various independent bodies, they are very, very important. Our experts, they already talk about the security by design. They already talk about that we need to inculcate this culture of security, culture of the privacy practicing at the very beginning of the software development life cycle. And apart from this, I also want to make a point over here that when we talk about the zero trust architecture, I also want to put force over here that trust should be there, trust should be maintained to the end user. End user may be the you and me, because nowadays when we woke up we just open our eyes, we have one thing in our hand, that is our mobile phone. And when we go to the bed, we have one thing in our hand, that is our mobile phone. And most of the thing we have on our mobile phone. Earlier, when we talk about that, my mobile phone have this much of GB memory. Now these are totally gone, because most of the things we have on the cloud services, cloud provider, various kind of services are provided over there. So that is the need, that the rules and regulations. In my earlier words, I mentioned this thing that GDPR is there. In India, we are talking about the DPDP Act of 2023. And apart from this, there are various MITs, there MHA is there. They are formatting many rules and regulations. So yes, these policies are really very important. We need to ensure that they are correctly implemented during the course of the cloud adoption. So trust should be maintained while we are achieving the zero trust architecture while the adopting the cloud.
Yeah. Thank you. So yeah, a couple of things is that trust is very important. Okay. For everyone primarily. This is how, you primarily developed a good economy, for your organization, and the right culture. Maybe, and transparency is the key. I think that is what I can, hear. And other is primarily that, yeah, one should focus on the regulation, and primarily the organizations which are tightly regulated, right? There are heavy compliances associated, heavy penalties are associated for the non-compliance. So especially in the BFSI, for every breach, there is a direct penalty. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. So, Raju, how can organizations effectively communicate their commitment towards the data privacy to its stakeholders and customers? And amid the growing concerns, right, around the personal data, we have been hearing a lot of breaches are happening, right? And today and tomorrow, most of the organization will get breached because no matter how much controls you put, still attackers will be one step ahead. That's why organization have to become cyber resilient. So, how to develop a trust and commitment, towards the end customers and our shareholders, board of directors. Yep.
Yeah, basically we say that organization have to be lucky all the times and the adversary has to be lucky only one time.
Yeah. Yeah.
Typically, I find it a big challenge because organizations' privacy, if they are responsible privacy as per the DPDP Act, it is manned by the individuals of the organization. And culturally, India is very poor in maintaining trust and privacy. As a culture, if you remember, some of us coming from employed job, leaving the towns and cities, when you leave, your parents give advisory, don't trust anybody. But when you do a train journey, we all must have done some train journey, childhood or somewhere. By the end of 12 hours of journey, you know the history of the passengers who are with you and you share the coordinates of further interaction and all. So we share it easily. So for organizations, it's a big challenge. Now, what is the type of data we collect and why do we collect? Simple questions like business engineering, why do we collect the data and why do we collect the way we do it? Suppose you are a vendor, why do you need your Aadhaar? Because Aadhaar Act says you come to any government office, they will ask your Aadhaar card. Now, and they don't accept the masked Aadhaar card. But Aadhaar Act says masked Aadhaar card should be valid. So who is responsible? Suppose I give my Aadhaar card to a particular reception I go for a meeting with one of my client. Who is responsible for the maintenance of the Aadhaar card? It's not digitized yet, but it may be digitized later at the end of the day. As per DPDP Act, the responsibility lies on data fiduciary. There is no responsibility on the individual who gives his data. There is no responsibility on the person, the data processor, the intermediaries who come. The only responsibility on the data fiduciary with a liability of 250 crores per case. And the money goes to the government. Money doesn't go to the individual. So we are worried that there will be a lot of lawsuits and files and nuisance cases will be there. Because now the thing is, I'm not only protecting employers' data, I'm responsible, organization also responsible for the contractual employees' data and their historical data. Suppose somebody is a contractual employee, we need to take consent of the data. And if somebody withdraws his consent, I need to have the mechanism in the data to remove the consent. Suppose I need to process data. And also, organization need to explain why the data is to be processed, for what purpose I am collecting the data, and it should be processed only for that purpose. So these strict guidelines are there, and so how do you maintain? How I am maintaining the data backup? I am validating the data backup. Typically, from my admin perspective, data is not validated. You run because When you make validation a part of data backup, it slows down the process. So typically people if you go to system admin, is not, because backup is a daily process. If it's a manually done, not automated fully, you will not like to validate the data because he needs to spend 2 more hours in his office. Then how many people have BCP drills and all? You're testing your backup. BCP DR from a disaster recovery point, fine, business continuity resolution point, but from a protection point of view, how you know that your backup is good and validated, and how you are maintaining the backup? Typically, as per data, a ransomware attacker, now which is available as service, I've seen advertisements for ransomware saying that I'll pay $10,000 if you're admin, share your password. And percentage of the attack, up to 40% of the attack value is also public advertisements are there. So in this scenario, typical organizations outsource all their IT work to the L1 bidder. So your data is now costly, data is now precious. You are handling all, put it in, like as you said, the core data is there in a data center. And who is handling the data center? Your outsourced employee, who is the cheapest paid. He is not even an employee. You don't even know him. You don't even acknowledge his presence. You don't even call him from any of the birthday parties inside the organization. You don't invite, he doesn't eat lunch with you. He's not a friends with you. You don't know his antecedents. You don't evaluate his social background. You don't know what is the communication he's having. And you have kept all the organizations, all the keys are with him. All the admin passwords are with him. So handling not only private data, suppose it can be confidential data. Now PII is coming under, even PHA for that matter, comes under confidential or top secret data because of the risk it imposes, because of the government DPDP. Earlier there was no risk, people were not bothered. If I'm a oil and gas supply vendor, your LPG, when we register for LPG, most of us use LPG, all the data is there on the, in a typical in a public sector cloud. How it's handled, we are not bothered to ask, but now I can ask the data. How it is being processed, each individual can ask. So as an employee, as a contractual employee, and how long do you maintain the data? Who is aware of the data retention laws? How many of us are aware? What type of data is to be maintained by what? What are the government guidelines? Does your organization have a separate data retention law? And if so, what is it? And how we are going to do it? If you are going to archive it, how are you going to validate your archive? You archive it in LTO3 tape and you have a tape of LTO6, which is LTO3 is obsolete. How do you recover the data? So how do you update your archive data? This adds a lot of cost to the company. So coming back to the question, it's a challenge and it is to be met. There's no other go to it.
Yeah. So I think very well said. And the employer, responsibility will become more, right? And you rightly mentioned that the third party risk management will become, more focus area, which might be currently ignored in many of the organizations, especially I'll say that who are not regulated, right? But if you see all the clauses of SEBI, RBI, NHB, IRD, exchanges, depositories, they mention the need of the third party risk management. So they need to ensure that they have an adequate security controls in place, and the entire gamut of data handling will change when this new law will come in effect. Yeah. So Soumik, right? So what major challenges do you foresee, right, in the near future, right, regarding the cloud security, privacy, and how as an industry leaders, like many of us, should be prepared to ensure that we are ready or maybe on a verge of becoming ready. Yeah.
I think in my first responses, I talk about the holistic approach of covering the entire cloud security posture. So on top of that statement, one thing which I did not talk about on the first response is that there are two aspects of the security, right? Rather, if I consider myself as a chief security officer along with the data privacy as well. So I think along with your privacy, touch base on the regulatory compliance is also one of the very toughest part that we can add on top of the security, right? We are having, I'm quite sure every organization having their own general counsel, right? Who need to take care about the legal aspect. Anything and everything that we are doing in the world of the security, that should be regulated in the consent of the data confidentiality, integrity, and availability, right? So in these three aspects, if I talk about, then apart from protecting the data, protecting the environment, securing the architecture of the cloud, I think we also have to take care. One part is that how I am proactively managing the cloud service, right? Here comes the part of doing that attack surface management. Here we are going to talk about the breach simulation attack practices, where basically what I'm trying to see here is that the data that I have already uploaded the data that I have put it in the third party journey, where I have already completed the third party risk management that I have talked about in my first statement, how much I'm pretty much sure that there is no dormant malware or some kind of a threats is already present in my environment, which I'm going to acquire as a service of the cloud, right? For that reason, I need to perform this kind of a proactive threat assessment, right? Here comes the technology where we are basically going to use the managed detection and response, or maybe the extended detection and response that we are going to add here on the top of the clouds, right? Even the application that we are going to put on the cloud, are we performing some kind of an application security assessment? Are we really performed exactly what I talk about? I think Mr. Dinesh has also talked about the same thing, that security by design and the by function concept. At the start of making any application, did we perform the proper threat modeling?
Sure.
Right? So those, all the posture which comes on the part of the proactive part of the security, that need to be adhered. Either it is on-prem or either it is in the cloud.
Sure.
Thought process will never change, right? So that is the way I think, way going forward to make sure that whatever we are taking the measurement in terms of the security, it will be go on in the same way journey.
Sure. Yeah. Thanks. So, sure.
Basically, part is how to secure data. The challenge is like a ransomware attacker typically is there in the network at least more than 200 days before detection happens, as per statistics. So how do we handle data? Do we mask the data? Do we encrypt the data? Do we encrypt in rest, motion, and use, 3 phases? That's a challenge because it adds going to cost to the thing. Sure. And there are, like when we discuss, some of the panelists discuss zero trust also. The challenge I see is most of the zero trust vendors, they are in cloud but not mighty approved. They say that they don't handle data, but they handle metadata. Now, I think you can answer the question better. But is metadata not need to be secure? So then does it need a validation? So what can intelligence cannot drive from metadata? So these are challenging questions.
Sure. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. Dinesh, so you hear a lot of challenges, right? So throw some light on the successful implementations which you have seen or done it, right, to address all of these challenges which are faced by many organizations. Yep.
Sure. I can take an example of an highly regulated industry like a bank. One of the bank where we implemented this solution. This security leader, the way he thought about from a design perspective is there are 3 functions in the company. Right? There's a CTO who's developing the applications, and all the developer community is part of his organization. The CIO is responsible for the infrastructure, all these things. The CISO from a policy governance perspective. So interesting thing, at the design stage, what he did was he came up with a statement called security is everyone's responsibility. Right? It's not just security team's responsibility, correct? Including the CEO. Okay, so he had this meeting internally, and we were part of that. Interesting thing, he drew something on the board, and so the example given was if you take a car manufacturing company like a Maruti, right? So they actually manufacture only the engine mostly. Rest of all the things are like assembled, correct? They get all these raw materials from third-party suppliers. Those raw materials, and assemble, and then the car goes out, correct? In the factory floor, if you see. So if you get the faulty raw materials, you get a bad car, and you need to you need to recall that car. So the way he explained is, the CTO organization, the developers, when they're writing the code, earlier when we were all writing code, 80-90% we write actually, and 10-20% we take from open source. But now it's reversed. Okay, 80-90% is all open source. Only 5-10% people write, right? It's all packaged. So you're downloading something from GitHub, or you're downloading something from somewhere, and those developers put their own security tools. They have their own way of putting security. Okay, And then when it goes into infrastructure, when you're putting those applications in your AWS, Azure, GCP, or private cloud, you require your VMs, containers, serverless, all these things. And then there is a separate set of security tools here. And the security team, they have their alert management, SOC automation, correct? You have your governance, risk compliance. There's a separate set of tools here, and runtime protection, all these things. So what he said on that board was, this is the same application all of us trying to protect. The same data all of us are trying to protect, but we are looking at these at 3 different lenses. So each of the leader bought separate tools. Okay? Now, but you go to the first floor of the factory and you look at all the entire shop floor, how the raw materials are coming into the company, who's downloading those open source from GitHub, are we scanning them? Correct? And all the CI/CD tools you're using, these days the supply chain security, if your supplier gets attacked, you're also breached.
Sure.
You saw that SolarWinds and all those things, correct? Yeah. And then you have the infrastructure layer, how this code is going into your VMs and containers, and then into production. If you look at it holistically and then see that this is the application flow in our company, this is where we need to put quality checks.
True.
But all of us, let's come together and then have a common framework. Okay, and this was because the product, any product you buy, any platform you buy, can do only 50% of the job.
True.
The other 25% comes from your people and processes. So the process, in my opinion, is extremely important. And this company, he had to convince internally the change management he brought in inside the company. We were part of many of this consulting exercise. So and then it was quantified. From a program management perspective, they quantified. They were publishing, say, the compliance score. They all decided, like CIS, we need to be 98% by so-and-so date. They're publishing the progress of this implementation, the progress of the compliance score to the board on a bi-weekly basis. The moment you quantify, people, it's gamified, right? Little bit, it's gamified, right? People take it more seriously, and which department is doing better. They put some healthy competition between these teams. So overall, generally, when you have that kind of approach and bringing other stakeholders also, because generally, it's when you all believe that it's the same application and data all of us are trying to protect, including your CEO, correct? So it's also his responsibility, CIO's responsibility, CISO, CTO.
Yeah.
It's security is everyone's responsibility.
Yes, yeah.
So that thought process brought in a lot of change in this company, and it was a fairly successful thing. And you made it very simple, actually, the implementation, the way we did it. Very few number of tools and 1 or 2 platforms, and then the security team was also told that they're not going to get more people. Unfortunately, the business teams, the CIO and CTO teams have, say, 100, 200 developers. There are 1 or 2 persons in the security team.
Yep.
Correct? So you need to automate these things. So all these alerts, they went through from the cloud security platform or integrated into a SOC automation platform, because hackers are using a lot of automation and a lot of engines actually, and you cannot manually detect and respond to them. 90% generally are hygiene alerts, what we see.
True.
Only 10% needs human intervention, but 90% ideally need to be automated actually. So a combination of firewalls and cloud native application protection platforms and our SOC automation tools, all 3 combined is a common framework given, and quantified that score, and all 3 teams came together, the CTO, CIO, and CISO organization.
Yeah. So thank you, Dinesh, and a couple of important: security is everyone's responsibility. So CISO or team should own the burden, and you are rightly said that common approach is required, and that culture need to be set in the organization. Yep. I think very well valid inputs. Yeah. So we are done with our discussion, and I would say a lot of things came out, and which are actually very practical in nature. That's why we thought that session would be more on the strategic perspective, not more on the technical perspective. And I'd like to thank each one of you, okay, for sharing your thoughts, and again thanks to DSCI for giving us the opportunity. Thanks, Shaurav. Yep.
Thank you so much to all the speakers, our moderator, Mr. Shankar Ramakiani. If we can just have, if we have the photographer, if we can just have a group pic